Good day, everyone, and thank you for being here today with Pro Quality community. My name is Vyacheslav, and today we continue our series of events about mobile automation. And we are delighted to have Sergey today join us as a speaker. Sergey, why is mobile automation is so crucial in today's world?
Hello, guys. I believe the answer is very easy because it's very simple. Because right now we see rapidly growing of mobile technologies, which came to people's life. A lot of applications. Uh, Many of websites have mobile version, and all of these, increasing of mobile technologies apps, all of these just bring more and more testing efforts. And when we have in every development team and on every project, when we have huge testing efforts, particular time people start to think about automation, because the primary goal of every automation is just reducing manual testing efforts and bring more efficiency in the development process.
Okay, so as I see, mobile development industry, let's say, it's rapidly growing, and I think that will be very popular in the nearest future anyway, in parallel with other types of automation testing, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I believe yes. Like for me, especially if we just analyze situation 10 years ago and now, mm, it became more and more popular, and uh, it bring more value if you have it in your experience. I mean, in case of job market, etc.
Okay, okay. So, guys, if you missed our previous event with Sergey, where we discussed automation, mobile automation of web applications, you can find the link here in YouTube in the description. And today, as you see, we will talk more about mobile automation of native applications, and Sergey will share with us uh, interesting insights about the most popular frameworks, compare key differences between them, and how to discuss the optimal use cases for each of them. So, during our talk, please feel free to ask any questions via YouTube chat, and we will address them in the end of the session. And now, let's give a warm welcome to Sergey. Sergey, the stage is yours.
Okay, greeting everyone. Thank you for joining this session where I will be discussing test automation for native mobile apps. Today, I will probably primarily be focusing on Appium and native frameworks. Additionally, we will explore when and for whom these frameworks are most advantageous and easily implementable. Okay, a few words about me. I'm Sergey, lead test automation engineer with 13 plus years experience in test automation, primarily in Java, but also Python and several GS frameworks. I work with many frameworks, UI types, and approaches for testing, also testing methodologies. At the current moment, I work in the Mobi which is a real device cloud platform when people can operate with remote real devices, perform manual verification, or execute their tasks, which based on Appium and native frameworks. Okay, here it is. So as you can see, I plan to go through typical phases, which usually happen when people need to start their test automation for a native app. Of course, on some project it can be additional stages, but in general, people usually go this way in some order. During session, you can leave your question again in the chat, and I will answer them at the end of in the Q&A section. Okay. Let's begin from start. One day you're approached with an opportunity for exciting new project, fresh application, new team, and change to focus solely on the automation, just test automation, development only. This sounds promising, but it is only the beginning because there's other aspects to consider. For instance, the project may require quick turnaround and you may be the sole test automation engineer on the project, which means that you're responsible for architecture, code review, and infrastructure setup. In addition, your test must confirm that everything is functioning correctly, and they need to be delivered as early as possible because development of mobile test automation is very short. I mean, development process and delivery. Another scenario is when it comes to long-term applications. However, even in such cases, new characteristics might be released and tested rapidly to keep up with the project objectives. Okay, so what people usually do, they start to review existing solutions and they see that there is some native app test automation. People start to check how it works and realize that it's much more different from web test automation, even the mobile web. You find a lot of different devices, versions of operating system, which should be supported and many different behaviors which should be checked, usually which related to gestures, strange UI which doesn't look like on web, and sometimes it's hard to imagine how to operate with this. But at the end, you see that the couple of solutions can be used in case if you need to write your tests quickly, cover many devices and different behaviors. First one is Espresso and XCUITest, official native frameworks for writing UI tests on Kotlin Java or Swift, which provides simple, predictable, and well-documented API for performing actions and operate with elements. Other one, Appium, which may use the Espresso or XCUITest inside, but it has own reference collection with supporting of many programming languages and based on client-server architecture. Please remember that biggest separation between these two is that native frameworks is white box. So you will have white box testing. And Appium just for black box. Because in case of native frameworks, you need to have an access to application source code for writing your tests. And I will show it later. So let me show some kind of example of, yeah. For example, you see our platform, and let's take just simple device. I mean, an example of such kind of differences. You see here, I already uploaded an application. So you see, here's kind of simple application, which looks like a simple form in the web. Inputs, labels, everything is predictable, you may believe. But if I go to native inspector, you will see very different domain object model. You will see some strange elements which may not say you a lot of information, and you need to learn, okay, what kind of image maybe that's okay, but what is view group, frame group? Because in web, everything is predictable. Because, for example, here is our okay, come on, here's our landing. Oh, sorry. Yeah, For example, here is our landing page. And if you will go to inspector, you will see usual, understandable domain model with a lot of clear attributes and their values. But here, as you can see, it's totally different thing. And some attributes which may look really unclear, like unclickable. What does it mean? Nothing like that. So you need to really understand every of these attributes, learn it, or maybe sometimes just have an additional lessons to learn. So it doesn't look, even if you have, what I want to say, even if you have an experience with web mobile automation, it doesn't mean that it will be easy for you to switch directly to native mobile testing. Okay, let's back to my presentation. Okay, let's start from fastest way. If you're talking about native mobile native automation, and for Android, we have the Espresso. So it's official, as I mentioned before, it's official native framework. And from initial point of view, it's very easy to start writing your tests. So you just check out Android application code and add appropriate dependencies related to tasks. And then you see that everything looks like very clear. So you can easily find all elements. A lot of actions are available. Many assertions are there, and it's very easy to run tests. But then, after the login screen, you start to realize that it's not so beautiful like you imagined before. Every complicated or custom element, it's kind of a nightmare, because you need to implement an additional assertion or view mature for it. Similar for list of elements, where items usually have the same element ID, like list of products, and it's necessary to operate with element index and so on. Also, Espresso has multi-device parallel test execution. It calls test sharding. But it's very primitive, and you can hardly manage it or perform something before or after thread starts. At the same time, it doesn't affect high execution speed and easy way to run tests. So let me show an example of tests. Here's my Android Studio. Okay, here is it. So you see, here is the application. It's which we developed directly for our testing purposes. And you see, here is the test. Looks very simple. Yeah, and as you can see, here is the thing which I mentioned before. This ID is related directly to place in the code. So you see, it's just a reference to element in code configuration. So you can easily switch it, go to design, understand, okay, what these elements is referred to. Yeah, like this. And you can easily search it, for example. Okay, you just type r.id, and then you see here is our category. It's very easy. Similar with assertions. So it's original Espresso pre-default reference correction, which is again well documented, and it looks like it's very easy to find elements or add them or change something. For example, if you want to change this one, just switch it. Okay, let's open code for quick switching. And for example, you can change it and it will be available like this one. Oh, sorry. Okay, let's start. Yeah, you see, it's immediate action. So it means if somebody will change ID or remove element, the application will be not even compiled. So it brings you fast response. I mean, in case of perform initial verification, and you see the ID is here. The same also if I will fix it. Yeah, it applies immediately. But again, as I mentioned before, you will see here I have separate matcher, and it looks complicated. You need to implement some specific logic because in case of list elements list, like for example, I have in another task. So if I need to click on add to cart button by index, for example, so I have products list, I have add to cart button, but this ID is the same for a list of elements. So it means I need to operate with an additional matcher, implement all logic just for find first one or second one, just for find element by index. So, and in fact, it is just a simple list of just simple table list of elements. So just imagine what you will have if you have on your project some really complicated, difficult elements. At the same time, as I mentioned before, let me just start tests, and you will see the execution speed. Okay, let me just finish it. Okay. Let me just take an ID. And yeah, upload an application. Yeah, fine. Let me just check. So, what approach do we have in our cloud for uploading applications? I mean, for executing, sorry, yeah, just point for executing Espresso tests. So, what we have approach for executing final version of such tests. So you just build an APK file with your application, like you see here, and then you build. It's very easy, and we have it in our documentation. So you just build. Sorry, yeah, you just build. Yeah, an APK file with tests, because all tests which I showed before related and actually placed in kind of separate project vehicle. And then we just create a run. So let me just take this ID. Yeah. Okay, where is it? Oh, sorry, not this one. Yeah, let me start the device session and then create an execution. Yeah. What will happen after that? So in fact, both of these applications will be installed to the device, and then test execution, I mean Espresso test execution will start. Yes, it takes some time in order to install apps, but it executed directly from IDE, because you see here, it's also easy. For example, if you have a simulator or connected device, it's also easy to execute tests directly from IDE. But in case of kind of CI test execution, it's better to execute tests directly from devices. I mean, just upload tests to some internal storage and execute them, yeah, like you see here, and then execute them in console-only logs. Because in this case, what you will have, you'll be independent of some network issues. Also, you can automate the whole process. So anyway, back to test execution. As you can see, the execution is pretty fast. So it means element finding, interacting with elements, as you can see, it's very quickly. Also, the one more point, as you probably see, every time Espresso just starts application from scratch. So, for example, here, as you can see, I just log in every time. I mean, my test log in every time. It is implemented by designer of Espresso. So please keep this in mind, that if you just want to have very small tasks, it means, and you have some difficult behavior, like you need to log in, create a lot of elements, and only then perform verification. In this case, you will have kind of problem, because you will need your precondition phase will be very long. So I understand why they implemented it, because every time you have kind of fresh app, and in this case, it's possible to have clear situation without some issues which came from previous test execution, and you just closely focus on particular test and receive all information directly for particular real case. During the test execution, here it will be performed 34 tests, which usually takes kind of 3.5 minutes. Even with performing login every time, even with switching to appropriate screen, it takes really for 10 tests on the real device. It takes kind of 5 minutes, so or 1 minute, sorry. For 10 tests, it's kind of 1 minute, which is one test. It's 6 seconds, which is really pretty fast. And please remember that it is also possible to execute, to just split your whole test execution and execute on several devices. And also, which is the good point, in case of Espresso, you will almost have some flag situation. If something is not loading, or Server cannot find an element. I mean, in case of client server configuration, when your test is a client, in this case, you may have some network issues, but here there is no network issues because everything will be started and performed on the device. There is no server here. And by this reason, it makes your test more stable. So again, it's also one more point. By default, I mean, from the box, there is no kind of screenshot capturing or thing like that. So in the final report, even in case of failures, you will have kind of stack trace. Yeah, detail it, but anyway, it will be kind of just base information like, okay, which assertion failed and what really was wrong. I mean, in case of location of test and just stack trace, maybe that's all. Okay, the execution finished. Let me release the device. Just let's review execution details. Okay, oh, kind of error. The execution takes a long time. Yeah, create it and update it. Okay, yeah, sometimes, as you can see probably here, you may have different kind of error. And this is not very often, but sometimes you may have error with installation on the device. Because as I mentioned before, here's the situation. You just install your APK files, and with installing of files, you may have some issues like unsuccessful installation. And in this case, all of your tests will be not run. So the whole execution will skip. According to this, if you set up your own infrastructure, you need to check and verify everything, that you have full compatibility between devices and your infrastructure and all of this. Okay, but anyway, you solved the test execution. Good. Let me just back to my presentation. Another native framework. Now for iOS. Situation is similar to Espresso and Android, but for most test automation engineers, it will be difficult to start writing tests directly after check out the application code. And the reason is very simple: the Swift programming language, which you have to use for writing your tests. Yes, it's well documented with a lot of examples. Yes, it's not so difficult in case of syntax, which, like, for me, looks like latest Java. I mean, 20 Java and later. But anyway, you will need to spend an additional time for cover simple operations, like performing connection in loop, make a custom validation, etc. Also, unfortunately, it's not possible to operate with list of existing elements directly in test. It means you need to search for an element ID inside the project, then it will require additional knowledge of iOS app internal structure. Plus, there is no true parallel test execution from the box in comparison with Android. You can say, okay, wait a minute, from Xcode 9, Apple introduced test sharding. Yes, the same name, kind of test sharding. But it's only possible to run the same test on several devices at the same time, and different sets of tests on multiple devices. But there is no internal mechanism which will take all of your tasks, split them, and execute every group on separate device. However, overall situation is not so pessimistic because it's easy to work with complicated elements, search inside list of them, and perform any gestures. Also, test execution speed is fast and real like in case of Espresso. So let me show the example for this. We have the Xcode, and here it is. Here is which I mentioned. You see here login. So I just here search for elements with login ID. As I mentioned before, that you cannot just have kind of context search here. You can just search like this. So login, probably let's do this one. Yeah. And here is it. You see accessibility ID. And here is the one of the benefit. So by default, when I received this application code, there was no accessibility identifiers, which I may refer in my test. But then I just added it by learn maybe during 1 hour some aspects of internal iOS application structure, and then I've added all of such identifiers like this one also. And then you can, okay, where's the tests? Yeah, it's here. Yeah, it's here. Then you see it's possible to search and receive this element by this ID, and then perform particular actions. Also, which is very good point here, you have different kind of elements groups. So like text fields, secure text fields, and similar for buttons and all of this. One more point is related to list of elements. So the good point here in compare with Espresso, that you may search by list of elements. So let me just see. Oh, not here. Yeah. For example, the same point, I need to add first element to the card. So I just search buttons, and then here's the magic method first match. So I just take a first element. I don't need to implement some specific algorithm directly for this list. I don't need to have an additional view matcher or thing like that. Just use official methods, especially if we go, add official reference collection, and operate with it. Also, the same like for Espresso, it's possible to run tests directly from IDE. Just switch here, click run, and tests will be executed on any device which is specified here, simulator or connected real device. Okay, and let me show you the execution speed. Okay. For example, not this one, XCUITest. Yeah. So let me also take a device. iOS, switching to iOS. Yeah, you see, it's iOS version. It's kind of older, but anyway, it is useful for now, and not so much powerful device. So I just take this device and let me start an execution. Okay. The situation is very similar. I mean, you just need to assemble an application API file, and similar file will be assembled additionally for tests. Okay, let me just check. Yeah, it's pending. And as you can see, 2 apps just installed. and execution will start soon. So it's similar situation, and main benefit also the same. You have no network issues. Everything executed will be executed directly on your device. It will be kind of no flaky situations, and at the end, but anyway, you will receive kind of similar report. I mean, just base information and info regarding when test started, what tests were executed, their state. I mean, just base info. And also the same like for Espresso. Every test will start from new application session. So as you can see, again, the same app start. We just log into it, I mean, in our test, and perform some action. And the same number of tests for this device and this iOS version, it will take a little bit more time in comparison with Android. And you can probably see it now, because in case of Android, it looks more slowly, but if you will take similar Android device, the total execution speed will be really very, very the same. Okay, just execution starts. Again, the same 34 tasks will be executed. Okay. Let me just, oh, yeah. Sorry. What is the one more point? It is not possible, unfortunately, to, for example, highlight element. Like in web test automation, for example, you may have situation when you can just change element. You can just change element background color or things like that, just in order to make it flashing. And in this case, you will see what really happens with what really happens with elements and what kind of elements test just takes. Okay, let me just refresh my device session. Yeah, as you can see, it's also everything is working even after refresh. Of course, it may work. It may not work without, I mean, without reviewing, but it doesn't impact test execution. Again, back to highlighting. Unfortunately, here, as I mentioned before, there is no kind of listeners or decorators which you can use for performing such kind of common methods directly for particular actions. I mean, from the box, there is no such kind of decorator which you can use for changing element state, like, okay, background color, in order to see, okay, what elements are taking now. Also, in case of output, of course, you can log something as as simple log, I mean simple console output with loggers. But at the same time, if you want to have, for example, separate log message for every of action, you will need to have some additional implementation kind of wrappers, which then you will use for which you will use then for interacting for covering such logging and adding it as an additional action, something like that. Okay, let me check. Still pending. Yeah, of course. One more point also is related to device state and all of this. So of course, I mean some base device action or elements. So it's more easy to operate with keyboard. I mean default keyboard. Open it, close it. Just interact with elements. Get their attributes and so on. Okay, probably that's all. Let me check. Yeah, it's complete. Let's just check the log. Yeah, now it's fine. Let me just scroll down. As you can see, here is the typical output of tasks. You see, from one point of view, kind of simple actions, but you cannot customize them. So I mean simple log messages, but you cannot customize them. So from one point of view, it's a lot of info. From other, if you want something additional, like, so you don't understand where's the place with code. So you see like, okay, title with the action and where this code, okay, we don't understand. I mean, where it's located. Yeah, it's method reference, what which line is referred to this one, you cannot understand. Okay, here is the final. You see, 37 tests. Yeah, 34 we have for Appium. Yeah, it's a little bit smaller. You see, kind of 5 minutes for 37 tests. It's a little bit slower than for Espresso. Again, it's more related to old iOS version and device. Okay, let me release this and switch back to my presentation. So, by some reason, probably you cannot use the Espresso or XCUITest, or you don't want to use them. You still have an option, and it will be more complicated at the initial stage. More complicated, and why? Several reasons. You can operate with only recognized elements, and I showed it at my early slides where I open it native inspector and show it specific DOM operating model. And you can operate in case of Appium only with these elements. So if Appium doesn't recognize something, you cannot work with it. Yeah, and it means if this element is custom, I mean some, and or this element has no ID, and usually that's very usual case when developers don't add it because it's not a part of definition of done. They just implement application, it works, and really don't care about, and these people really don't care about automation engineers. And in this case, Appium will not recognize elements and you will not be able to work with them. Also, it may take a time to receive IDs in all necessary elements because again, developers have to do this, and usually it's kind of low priority task. So they just create a ticket in some management system, just specify low priority and sometimes forget about it. Also, second one reason, you need to learn custom structure of elements in native app. From the initial point of view, it will look like simple HTML page, but then you will see a lot of differences, especially in case of attributes and condition. I showed it before. Also, it will be unique for every platform. If you will need, third one reason, if you will need to perform something special like draw a cycle, it will be kind of nightmare because you will need to calculate appropriate coordinates and perform move actions using them. At the same time, if you want to reuse your tasks, now we switch to benefits. If you want to reuse your tasks for both platforms, it's very easy to do because the Appium has internal mechanism for storing different locators of the same element. Big Plus is supporting a lot of frameworks and programming languages. For example, if most of your tests are written in GS and you want to keep the same technology stack, for example, if you just have web automation, it's also easy to do this. Good point also is WebDriver-like concept when the Appium, which is the Appium based. In this case, you will be able to operate with similar classes like WebDriver, WebElement, etc. Similar, very similar, actually the same like in web automation. And in this case, let me just show you example. Okay, here is the my Appium test. You see here it's kind of test for check login functionality, and here is the page. So here you can, for example, operate with page. You can implement a page object model using the Appium because anyway it's WebDriver based. And you see here one element and two locators. It's very comfortable because anyway you may have like we have here the same code base and two kind of platforms which you need to cover. Actually, you may have not even the same code base, but the same concept and two platforms which should be covered. And in this case, the same elements, maybe with a little bit difference, but anyway, the same elements, the same behavior which you need to check. And in this case, it's very easy to cover this case. And also, you see here web element, which is really the same. If I will open it, in fact, it refers to Selenium, official Selenium web element interface. So in this case, it is more clear than, for example, some elements reference collection in case of, for example, iOS and Espresso. Okay, let me just start my tests for Android. Okay, so it will be the same application, but less testing scope. It will be kind of 34 tests. And in this case, you will be able to review the execution speed. Okay, yeah, you see the device is taken. We'll see that execution will start. The one more point also, like on simple web tests, it's very easy to work and operate with some, for example, list of elements. So it's very easy to do this. You just declare your list of elements, put locators, and work with these without any problem. Yeah, this is point. It's very easy here. Okay, you see here the execution speed, and it's an Android. It's Android, which is really similar. Before it was Google Pixel 7, now it's 6a, which is kind of similar devices. But even here, as you can see, it's kind of delays. the total execution time is more slowly. And why? Because here you have client server. Tests are clients. They just send requests with commands to our internal Appium server. Then it just redirects all requests to particular device. And after that, for every kind of action, you have kind of specific delay, which if you will take one simple action, this delay will be, less even than 1 second. But if we have, even here, if we have 34 tasks, and for every test, it's kind of 10 actions or 15, it's 500 more than. So in this case, the delay will be kind of problem, especially if you're talking about some huge regression suite with a lot of tasks and many of scenarios which should be covered with a lot of elements. But and also here you need to implement some wait mechanism for waiting elements appears in the DOM, because it's not covered directly by easy way from the box. Of course, you can specify some implicit wait, which people from Selenium don't recommend to use. But anyway, like for me, it will bring you more problem, because if some element will be not accessible, or if some element will be changed, the test execution will wait every time your element then failed test. So it will take, in case of total execution time, more and more minutes, more and more time. So okay, we can see execution finished, session is closed. Let me back. Yeah, this total time, it's only actions. Again, it's 29 tests. It's so we have 20% test less here because of some particular issues with Appium specific gestures and my devices, which I mentioned before. So not everything can be covered by the Appium. And for 20% less tests, we have similar time like on Espresso test execution. And so it means the total execution time is 20% more, even for such kind of small number of tasks. But anyway, let me just show you case which related to cover both platforms. So the same tasks with the same elements will be executed for iOS now. And you will show it. And for iOS, we will use the same device. The same point, I mean, the approach is the same framework. Yeah, and to device. Yes, we'll see. Yeah, the application is solved. And by the way, let's check the Appium log. And you see, here's what I mentioned before. That's a lot of requests, a lot of network interactions. And for example, if you have your task located somewhere in other parts of the world, and you need to execute your task, the network may be a problem, because for example, you may receive a situation when device located in the EU, your CI server located somewhere in Australia, and you need, from your tasks, you need to send a request to our internal API internal Appium hub, which located in the EU also. Then response returns to Australia, and then process also takes some time, and after that it repeats again. See, that's for the 1 second, it's a lot of actions, and in this case, you may have real problems. I mean, in case of total execution time. Especially, for example, if you want to debug it on your local machine. For example, there is no problem in CI, but you want to debug your tests during new test implementation or changing. And in this case, you'll probably need to set up your local infrastructure, because you may be located in some other country or place of the world, and it will hugely impact on development process. I mean, test automation development process, when it will take a lot of time just to receive appropriate situation. I mean, which you will need for debug or creating your test. I mean, the precondition phase. Even here, as you can see, it takes a time for, I mean, for performing some actions, for waiting elements, or for receiving element state. Yeah, for even for click. So sometimes it may take a problem. I mean, kind of this kind of base architecture. I mean, client server. But anyway, the benefit is very huge, as you can see. So you can have one test code base, and also you may write your test directly in framework which you want to use. With, for example, here we have a Java, and in Java it's a lot of frameworks with good parallel mechanism from scratch. So it means, I mean, not from scratch, from the box, like TestNG framework, where you have a lot of listeners. So you may implement some additional decorators for log every time something during click or select or find elements. Yeah, test is finished. 4 minutes for the same number of tests. So you see, similar situation. iOS is slower. Anyway, back to kind of benefits. So in case of, for example, Java framework, you may operate with frameworks with the perfect parallel mechanism from the box. You don't need to implement something. You just can use it, where it's easy to specify particular test data for set of tasks, and then just have parallel execution on separate device. And this is kind of benefit. So anyway, it's kind of mixed situations. I mean, every framework have just pluses and minuses, and I will talk a little bit later about this. So the execution is less. Again, we have kind of 5 minutes for 37 tasks. Here, 20% more or less, and it's not 20% of kind of less in case of execution speed. And at the same time, here we didn't start from scratch. I mean, every time before tests. Okay, let me back from my presentation. So here's the overall situation which we have for both options. Please keep in mind that several criteria like multi-platform support can be real blockers for some projects, and you will have to use the Appium, for example, even if all other things will be worse than native frameworks. Another example, when all tasks should be delivered with the app and people just say, we don't need separate project with tasks, which written using some specific framework, and it will be necessary to spend time in order to learn all things and perform setup. So in this case, people may ask, okay, we understand Appium benefits, but we need tasks directly with application in the using the language which application is written. Anyway, it's very important to realize all benefits and difficulties before moving forward to start using of some solution, because it will be hard to change something in the future and explain it. Okay, as a result, what can I say? There is no silver bullet in case of test automation instruments for native apps. I cannot say it, okay, just use one option and it will solve everything. You'll probably understand it after all of my presentation. As you can see, each of them has some real pros and real cons. On the slide, you can see some general advices, but let me provide some real examples for every option. Okay. Here is a real example for a native framework. Just imagine the app which will be developed only for iOS, because people believe that such audience will bring more value for their app. And it contains a lot of specific elements with own behavior, and you can interact with elements very different ways. At the same time, people want to have tests with app code because they just say after release, we'll have not a lot of changes, and our one or two developers will have enough time to support, improve, and enhance current tests. Here is the best example for native frameworks. Here is the real example for Appium. Just imagine another app, which should be more almost the same on iOS and Android in order to follow the unique style and have the same functionality like in web version, which is primary in a lot of cases. I mean, web application, web desktop application, website. Many times you even need to check that sync between web and mobile is working fine. Do something in browser, check in mobile. At the same time, the company has own standard for test automation technologies because they want to use the same framework, leads, and approach, at least on the high level. The reason is simple. People just want to support mobile tests by engineers from web test automation team. It's just an example. And one of the best maybe real applications for this is kind of news magazines or social network when you need to cover all platforms and where people in a lot of cases just use websites. Oh, sorry. Yeah, the summary. Here is the summary. Okay, don't wait too long. Yeah, the general point. Don't wait too long before selecting a way. Ideally, you need to decide even before application development will start. A review item in overall, I mean, which I mentioned before, to make sure that there is no blockers from the framework which you plan to use, especially when you have huge application or it is planned, I mean, some long-term application. Clarify with app developers everything, like who will add test IDs for elements in case of Appium, or how test code will be reviewed and submitted to main application branch in case of native frameworks. And last but not least, show to all team how execution and results will look like. So even before application development will start. So if you don't have an app, just take some examples from the GitHub, a lot of them. But please don't use some single button or single form application because it will show almost nothing to people. 10 seconds execution, few tests and results, and people will don't understand what really happened. So please take an app for POC. I mean, just show, okay, what is the difference and how it looks. So please take an app for POC with multiple screens, 6 tasks for every screen. Ideally, a repository, just in the GitHub, just find a repository with app and tests together. Okay, also, here you can find several links which I use it for preparing presentation. Yes, it's official guides which may look boring sometimes and a lot of some unusable information, you may believe, but then allow you to deeply understand how things work. And of course, they always contain latest information. Also, at the end of the list, you can find 3 links to repositories with demo apps, which I use today for demonstration. All of them are public, so you can find them in the GitHub. And every repo also contains example of tests together with the app code. Okay, I believe that's all from my side. So
thank you, Sergey, for insightful presentation. And dear participants, if you liked the talk, please, if you enjoyed the talk, please follow the QR code and rate our event. And also, you can send a badge to Sergey. And now, let's proceed to the Q&A sessions. We have plenty of questions, but first question I would like to ask from my side. So, Sergey, you mentioned on one of the slides that we have to use not to use. It's good to use Appium for Flutter and Reactive Native applications. But what if, for some reasons, we are not able to use Appium? What are the options in this case?
yes, so for frameworks like like Flutter on React Native, where you just have a single code base and using it can create application for multiple platforms. Officially, if you will go to React Native site for end-to-end tests, they suggest to use the Appium. But there is no final option, or I mean single one option. And it's probably a good topic for kind of other session. But anyway, for Flutter, they have own end-to-end test framework, which actually similar to native frameworks, which I mentioned today. So similar, I mean, you need to write your task directly in Dart language. You can execute your tasks, so you can store your tasks with the app code and execute them. But anyway, it's other one topic, and it's not a so popular way due to some kind of difficult things and not so, like for me, well documented. For React Native, they even have they have some components tests. I mean, some frameworks for components, so you can check particular screens with mocks, just mocking data and check particular screens. But anyway, what I suggest in this case, okay, for example, for Flutter, you may use their native test framework. For React Native, you can cover as much as possible tests using component frameworks from React Native, and just have little Appium end-to-end test suite, which will cover kind of just base functionality and have just ideal kind of testing parameter with a small number of UI tests. Like for me, it will be more efficiency in case of, okay, we don't want to have all our tests in Appium.
Okay, so if summarize quickly, so we need to review maybe one more time why we are not able to use Appium, and because there are no at the moment good ways how to do it instead of Appium. Okay, thank you, and let's see what we have in YouTube chat. So the first question is from Dmitry. Are XCTest cases and XCUITest the same, just different classes?
It's not different classes. Thanks for questions, very good. And it confused me first because I first said, okay, XCUITest. Okay, what is the difference? XCTest is it's kind of unit framework. So it's like JUnit in Android or Java applications. So it's framework for writing your tests and executing them. But XCUI, it's kind of, I can call it kind of extension or thing like that, where you have, where Apple actually provides additional reference collection for working with UI elements, starting your application, performing actions, and verifying some state or performing assertions. So like in Android, you have Espresso as kind of framework additional. So you have JUnit, which is using for managing your tests. I mean, executing them, so, creating classes, marking methods as test method. The same for Apple and the development of iOS and Swift. You have XC. XC is a JUnit, which can be used for writing tasks, storing them in the classes, and XCUITest as a separate reference collection, which can be used for identifying elements and performing actions and assertions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And let's move on to the next question. The next question is how long it takes to learn mobile automation testing for functional testers? So just piece of advice, maybe. What do you think? How much time it will take?
It sounds like a topic for separate session or talk, but let's say it depends on experience which you have. Because, for example, one point when you just work it with web application, I mean desktop, without any experience in mobile, like even mobile version of website. In this case, it will take more time. I mean, of course, you will need to take several lessons. So it could, if we just want to talk about numbers, it will take several weeks, maybe. I mean, to learn everything deeply, like I mentioned before, when you take an official documentation and learn everything, how it works, what kind of elements you have. I mean, in case if you have no experience at all with the mobile as an area, if you worked before with, let's say, mobile version of web application, website, let's call it this way. If you work it before with mobile version of website, you work it with Appium, you understand some things regarding devices. I mean, okay, some aspects of executing on the devices, which I actually mentioned in my previous session, which was related to web test automation for the mobile. In this case, I believe it can kind of week or two when you will understand what is the difference. Because in this case, when you have some experience of mobile web automation, the main point which you will need to learn, what is the difference between native and web. And you will see that, okay, you will have, you will already know, okay, what is device, what may be a problem we have with device, what is the Appium, how it works, and you will have such experience. And only things which you will know, okay, what is the app, how it can be assembled, what kind of DOM structure, which I showed today, and what is the difference, and how to operate with this. So it will, like for me, it's kind of half time of total learning efforts. If you're talking about person who have no experience in mobile at all, and person who worked with mobile a bit, maybe with mobile website.
So, dear participants, if you don't have any experience in mobile testing, so it can be the first step to your way to mobile automation testing to understand specific of it that will save you time in future for automation purposes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, actually, it's a good point. If you want to learn mobile automation, just start from, if you, for example, have a website, just start to learn, and for this website you have mobile version, just start to learn it from mobile, from automation for mobile version of this site, because you will understand all aspects of working with devices, Appium infrastructure, I mean, some principles, etc.
Okay. Thank you, Sergey. Next question is: does XCUITest case use performance tests in application development?
So I didn't actually review this point of tests, but what I know, sometimes it's possible to simulate performance loading in case of mobile applications. For example, using tests, you can just simulate multiple actions. For example, during a short time, just simulate multiple touches or taps on some button, and we can call it kind of performance test. But anyway, please remember that XCUITest and XCUITest, it's kind of it's more related to unit testing or things like that. So of course we can use kind of unit testing frameworks, etc., for simulating performance activities. But like for me, it is better to use specific frameworks which will just test the performance of the device and how it really works under the loading. Anyway, you can capture, especially if you're running tests directly from IDE, you can capture some performance information, like statistic of RAM usage, CPU utilization, and so on. So it's possible for native frameworks, and it's very easy, and it's possible. For Appium, it is not always from the box. So for some cloud platforms, yeah, you can view it, you can take this. For many cloud platforms, you cannot receive this information, meaning in case of Appium. By this reason, if you want to, this is the second point actually, if you want to measure your performance, it's more easy to do in case of native frameworks like XCUITest.
Okay. Thank you. Next question is: how is possible to launch a test cases on, let's say, 5 simulators and 5 real devices simultaneously?
For Appium, it's very easy.
Yeah, and some more context. So this is about iOS devices.
Yeah. I get it. I understand. For Appium, it's very easy because you only what you need, you just use appropriate framework, proper framework. which support such kind of parallelization. And you'll just take a list of devices, then specify particular UDIDs, simulator or real device. Just send it to every thread. For example, you have 10 threads. For every thread, you will send unique UDID of device, simulator, or real device. And in this thread, test will use it as a device identifier, will start an Appium session and interact with device and execute test. And then you will have 10 similar test execution. I mean, 10 similar devices which will be used simultaneously and tests will be executed on them. And for Appium, it doesn't make sense. I mean, they just operate with IDs, I mean, UDID. And when you just send a request, start a session for the UDID, Appium just review all connected devices, simulators or real devices, and select it by UDID. In case of XCUITest, it's really difficult. Yeah, as I mentioned before, they introduced a kind of sharding. So the same tasks, the same suite of tasks can be executed at the same time for multiple devices. So you can check the same regression scope on many devices at the same time. But it will take kind of additional implementation in case of CI script, let's say. Because yes, you can do it from command line, but you will need to receive all IDs and build appropriate starting test command in your custom specific script. So it's also possible. It's not possible, as I mentioned before, to split your test execution, but it's possible to run the same scope of tests on multiple devices at the same time. You can, again, in documentation from useful links, which you also will be able to find in description of current session. In official Apple documentation, you can find this information. I mean, how to run simultaneously the same number of tests on multiple devices. Yeah, they introduced it. But the problem will be also, please keep this in mind, that it will be hard to combine all reports together in this case. In case of Appium, you will have all reports in the same, because it's multiple threads, then all of them will be ended, and at the end of execution, you might have a single report. Here, it will be more difficult.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Artyom. What courses on mobile application automation using Appium one and the second one native automation could you recommend?
What I want to recommend at first, just learn, just try. It will take an additional time. Just try to learn, just try to read and understand official documentation. And it will allow you to understand how things work, as I mentioned before. And it's a very good point, because every course, even this one speech, it's kind of opinion. Anyway, yeah, it's a lot of facts, it's a lot of showcases, but it's opinion from some people. Anyway, what I want to recommend, I will not tell now particular names, but like for me, in case especially of test automation, I suggest to look at courses and lessons where people show you real examples, more and more real examples from the real life, more practice. When you just maybe hear less, but do more by your own. And in this case, your experience will grow. Because in case of sessions, where people just explain everything and almost don't show something real. In this case, it is like it is like have driving lessons without drive a car. So, like for me, I suggest to look more at lessons or sessions where people have more real practical examples.
Okay, thank you for your advice, piece of advice. So, and we have some time for the last question for today. So, rewarding my question from the via community site, I suppose. How would one proceed with automating test scenarios that require reading and verifying push notifications on iOS without using real devices? So that's quite interesting question. What do you think?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I believe so. Let's say, if we back to our topic, I mean, which I said before. In case of Appium, it will be kind of difficult to do this. So, I mean, using direct way. In XCUITest, I believe you will be able to do this, even in case of kind of maybe simulator, but you will need to perform many of preparations of things like that. So, as I mentioned before, in case of XCUITest, you just have more ability to perform something with application or perform some additional actions, non-usual, like click or type. And in XCUITest, you probably you will have more abilities to do this and to cover your cases. So if we back to our initial topic of current talk, if you have a lot of such custom cases, my suggestion, please look more to native frameworks, because in this case, yeah, of course, nothing is impossible. So you will be able, even with Appium, to cover some of these. Maybe just write something, change something in Appium because it's open source solution. But anyway, like for me, in case of XCUITest, it will take less time.
Okay. So it was the last question for today, and yeah, I think we have some questions in our chat, so we will answer all of them after the event. So please see comments from Sergey after the event. And Sergey, thank you so much one more time for sharing your expertise with us today. And dear participants, we are excited to announce that our next event in this series will focus on using AI tools in mobile automation. So please scan our QR code to join us in our social networks. Stay tuned, and may your test always be flawless. So I think that's it. Uh, have a good the rest of the day, guys. Bye bye.